the start of something new here on ESPNcricinfo. It is our wide network of reporters who lie at the heart of everything we do on ESPNcricinfo in bringing you the stories from around the world of cricket. So we thought, why not get the collective might of our reporters together in one video capsule so that all the biggest talking points of the sport, which are usually broken by these people, are presented to you in greater light by the same individuals. With that, it's a warm welcome to everyone on Reporters Assembled. On episode 1, I am Yash Jha with the pleasure of the company of a wide range of individuals spanning the world of cricket. One of us is presently sitting in Pakistan, but the grill on this face will tell you where he comes from. Bangladesh correspondent Mohammad Ihsan. One of us used to once be in Pakistan, now based in the UK, covering everything around the world of cricket for quite a while for ESPN cricket correspondent Samuddin. And one of us covers the length and breadth of T20 cricket usually for us. This time he will have other things to shed light on, while also assuming the important role of bringing down the average age of this conversation. That is Matt Roller joining us from the UK. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Welcome to Reporters Assembled. Bangladesh has witnessed what is absolute history in recent weeks as Bangladesh completed a test series win in Pakistan, their first ever test series win over Pakistan. Isam, it's a victory that would be steep enough on cricket grounds alone, but add the context of everything Bangladesh has been through over the last month or so. Can words do adequate justice to what this victory really means?
Yeah, when it was the time for Shakib to hit those winning runs, I was breathless. Like I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. I've covered a lot of cricket for Bangladesh, like cricket of Bangladesh cricket team for a long time, but it's very rare to see them win abroad, and it's the rarest thing for Bangladesh. It's just the last 4 weeks in Bangladesh have been epic, actually. It started in mid-July. All of those the student protests that started, and it got very violent, deadly, and it had a direct effect on the cricket team. They had to stop their cricket training back in Dhaka, and they moved to Lahore 4 days ahead of schedule to train at the Gaddafi Stadium. Basically, Bangladesh had 7 training sessions before this first test match against Pakistan. So putting that into the whole context, it just, it's mind-boggling how they put their wits together. They got everything right. It's astounding how they not just outskilled Pakistan, but also I think out Pakistan. So that is the big thing for Bangladesh. They haven't been this matured in a very long time.
I mean, for them to have won from facing up to 448 for 6 declared in that first innings that Pakistan made those runs, and Rizwan was scoring runs and partnered by Pakistan's middle order, and then to be 26 for 6 in the second test on the third day of the second test after the first day was rained out. I think that kind of cuts through everything that has happened in this series and gives you like the context of this win. And one of the most impressive things of the many in this Bangladesh side that I saw, at least, Nahid Rana, we have a soft spot for fast bowlers in this part of the world, of course, and like he was just electric to watch. Shan Masood, a good old fast medium swinging seaming bowler, always fun to watch. But I think one of the things that kind of really emphasized the difference in approach and gap between the two sides was Zakir's innings in the chase. For him to come out and play the way he did at the start of the innings, it was surprising for me to see. I think Assam will confirm that it wasn't the kind of innings that he always plays in test matches. But just the message that he gave was, it's a tricky target. There's dark clouds above, and there's a brand new ball in the hands of a guy who completely poleaxed our top order in the first innings. We're up against Pakistan. We've never beaten them in Pakistan. We've come close a few times, but never beaten them. Came out, threw that all to one side, and got them off to such a start that even with a some late jitters in the chase, they still got home ultimately very comfortably. I think that mentality really kind of emphasized for me the gap between the two sides in the series.
There have been contributions across the board in this series when top order runs, Mushfiqur and Shakib chipped in as they do, lit on Das with that sensational turnaround century. But really the story that shocked a lot of people who probably weren't following the test closely were those two pacers. Hassan Mahmood and Naeed Rana, with all of 4 tests between them, doing what they did to decide the course of that game and the series. How much of a great sign is that for Bangladesh?
It's everything. They discovered Rishad Hussain recently, and now he's the Big Bash has just pulled him up. Like they've taken him in the draft. I think Hobart Hurricanes took him. That's a big news. But Naeed Rana, as Usman Bhai was saying, it's unique. This pace, this height, this bounce, and to think that this guy came into cricket just 4 years ago. So he took up the cricket ball practice 4 years ago in a distant place from Dhaka called Chapai Nawabganj. It's close to Rajshahi, and for this guy to come through, it's most cricketers in Bangladesh come through despite the system. So this guy, I know he's just played his second Test series, but we have to bear in mind that he broke a record in Bangladesh just 2 years ago. He had taken 30 wickets in first-class cricket in a season. That had happened after 11 years. The manager, Rabit Bhai, was telling me the other day that probably his village didn't have a TV set till about 2-3 years ago. So this guy comes from nowhere, takes the world by storm. And the fact that he has done it in Rawalpindi of all places, just the only thing that is not Rawalpindi-esque or as Shoaib Akhtar-esque is the really 1950s style celebration that this guy has. He just doesn't celebrate. He just walks up to his teammates and shakes their hand.
I will give all three of you 20 seconds, a maximum of 20 seconds to answer. Question being, is this the greatest moment in the history of Bangladesh cricket? We've heard from Isam, Osman, right on this one.
I'm going to waste 19 seconds if you want by talking whatever, but I could tell people my name. I could, I don't know, talk about Shoaib Akhtar maybe or his hair or something. And that's what took about 15 seconds in. Yeah, it is very clearly and very easily, inarguably, Bangladesh's greatest cricket performance.
Robert.
Sorry to ruin it for you, Yash. Yeah, who am I to disagree with the great Isam? I think particularly, cricket has a history of operating within a wider social and political context, and I think when you put that backdrop in, it feels like a clear number one.
Isam, do I need to ask you again?
Yeah, I mean, there have been some, like Bangladesh have done a lot of miracles in cricket, but those are one-offs, I think. Cardiff 2005, Cardiff 2017, Mount Maunganui, that often comes to mind. But again, they really had a hard time in the next Test match and following year. So, yeah, this has to be the greatest. The Rawalpindi Test matches were amazing.
I almost feel like there's a perfect segue here in the absolute opposite flashpoll, Osman. Is this Pakistan cricket's worst ever moment? But I won't be that rude, not on the first show at least. But it is a big story for us to track. The sort of free fall, and this is not reacting on the basis of one defeat, even though this is a defeat that sorely has to rankle. But it's been a while now. 10 home tests without a win, 3 wins out of 17, I believe, from the start of 2022. What do you worry is the most worrying sign of where Pakistan Test cricket is headed?
It's not, by the way, just Test cricket. The early exits from the T20 World Cup, the ODI World Cup the year before that, losses to countries they would have ordinarily dominated. It is a longer term dip for sure. And I think what's most worrying is that the people in charge of running the game there are as clueless as they have been for a while. And it's a big word to use. We try and avoid using words like that. Because you want to kind of do, you want to give justice to the reportage and stuff. But really, like the succession of board chairmen and administrations that Pakistan Cricket Board has had since Ehsan Mani ended his tenure in August 21, has been, ridiculous. We've had, I think, 4 or 5 chairmen since then. We've had umpteen selection committees, different coaches, captaincy changes as well. And when you have that much instability happening at the top of the game, you can only expect these kind of results on the field, because suddenly nobody's certain about their position in the side. Shan Masood, there's much to like about him as a cricketer, but unfortunately, 11 years now into his career, averages 28 from Test matches, has never quite been able to put together a run of performances apart from maybe one brief period in 2018. but has never been able to put together consistent performance to secure his place in the side. That in itself wouldn't be as much of a concern as, the kind of, you look at the way the administration is kind of handling the game right now. There's this focus on the Champions Cup. They think that the answer to these problems is to put in 3 new tournaments into what is already a very packed calendar. The amount of money that is being spent on these tournaments, with no real idea of what that money is going to bring back to you. When you're spending 5 million rupees a month on each of the 5 mentors that you have for the Champions Cup. This is Waqar Younis, Misbah ul Haq, Saqlain Mushtaq, Shoaib Malik, and one more whose name I'm
Sarfraz.
Ahmed. 3 of these guys have been coaches of Pakistan recently with the results that we've all seen. So you're paying these guys 5 million rupees a month. That's, nearly $20,000 a month you're paying them. And they're not the coaches, by the way. They're just the mentors. So we don't even know what that role really kind of wants and what it's meant to achieve. So I do feel that, as long as that doesn't change, you will continue to see Pakistan kind of descend. Maybe occasionally they'll have these performances where, they'll win a one-off game or they'll have a run in a tournament. But that kind of long-term upward trend that you're looking for, it's built on the basis of stability off the field, which, Pakistan just haven't had for the last 3 years.
Islam, just want to get a quick sense from you, since you were at the grounds for this series. Was there a sense of discontent among the crowds as they watched the team unravel?
What I was really surprised was the lack of crowds at this test series, actually. I think PCB tried it a little bit with the free entry, but, it also seemed like since Pakistan's performance, and I can relate to it because Bangladesh also had a horrible exit from the T20 World Cup. But I think after Pakistan's exit from that World Cup from the first round, it did brew a lot of discontent among fans. I mean, when I talked to them, when I've spoken to a lot of people during this tour, I could sense that they were a little unhappy with how things were being run or how things were being played even on the field.
Your choice, whether you answer this in 5 seconds or 20. Will Shan Masood's captaincy tenure end 5 games in?
Yeah, I suspect so. I don't see how you survive with that kind of individual performance, and also with now the record of 5 losses in 5 tests as captain is the worst start for any Pakistani captaincy. He's always talked a good game, but I just feel like this one is probably one result too many. You get whitewashed against Australia, that's fine. That's almost like a rite of passage for Pakistani captains. Everyone gets whitewashed against Australia, but to do that at home against Bangladesh, I think that might be the straw that broke a very young Cameron's back.
Islam?
Yeah, from what I've seen and what I've heard, I think it's also a bit of a burden on him being a not so big superstar in Pakistan in terms of his numbers, as well as Usman Bhai just said, that 11 years and probably one of the lowest averages for a Pakistan captain. So given how the subcontinent runs, I won't be surprised if he loses his job after this series.
3-0, right? After your answer.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose there's a chance he might cling on, just in some kind of bid for continuity. But I think it's now coming up for, I think it might even be more than 4 years since he last scored a Test 100, and obviously he's been in and out of the side during that time. But seems like a dead man walking, really.
Got on to one bit of your answer, Usman. He talks a good game. He also talks well about the game, which is why it's lucky for Shan Masood. He knows when the playing days are over, he's already got a glimpse of what lies ahead. We will welcome him back on ESPNcricinfo whenever that happens. It's time to move towards England, because I'm sure, Matt, your interest peaked when Isam mentioned crowd numbers in Rawalpindi, because that was quite a subject of discussion in the UK. But that's not the biggest story coming out of the UK, because Brennan McCullum, having heralded the Test match revolution, will now also oversee England's right ball setup. Matt, when we took over as Test coach, you thought it's the lowest ebb possible for English Test cricket, at least in the 21st century, and we've seen what he's done there. He takes over a white ball setup, which has had 2 tournaments that belie their reputation that they'd built in the years immediately preceding one. What do you expect? What are the biggest challenges? What will he look to fix first?
Well, just quickly before I jump into the white ball stuff, it's interesting as well that McCullum's extended his contract full stop, because it was due to expire pretty much straight after the 25-26 Ashes, and now runs until 2027, which takes in not only another Ashes series, but obviously now 2 World Cups with the white ball stuff. So I think from Rob Key's point of view, the decision maker is managing director. It'll be a massive thing that they've managed to lock him in for an extra period, because Key is a huge fan of McCullum's and thinks that he's done a brilliant job as England's Test coach. It was quite funny looking back actually to the time of McCullum's appointment. He originally said he wasn't interested in the England white ball job at the time when the roles were split, because he saw just being white ball coach as quite a cushy job, was the word he used. That is to say, it was a pretty easy gig because everything had been put in place by Owen Morgan at that point, who was still the captain at the time they were last hiring. And it looked as though it should basically run itself for a while. What actually happened was it sort of seemed to do that for a little bit in 2022 when England won the T20 World Cup, became the first team to hold both men's white ball titles simultaneously. But then it's all fallen apart pretty quickly in the past 18 months or so. Obviously had that pretty miserable 50-over World Cup defence in India, where they won 3 out of 9 group games, 2 of which they'd already been eliminated, so about as bad as it gets for a defending champion. And then obviously in June they reached the semi-finals of the T20 World Cup, but the problem was firstly the manner of the exit. They got absolutely ripped to pieces really by India in Guyana, lost by 68 runs, which is a thrashing in a T20, and looked like a side without much identity or style, which had been such a key part of England's white ball setup for a long time. Longer term, the big challenge is going to be how McCullum manages his time. We've seen Andrew McDonald and Rahul Dravid quite often hand over to assistants because the big three play so much international cricket for certain bilateral series. But more generally, there are 2 big sort of twin peak moments coming up. 25-26 winter, England goes to the Ashes and then play a T20 World Cup in India and Sri Lanka pretty soon after that. And then 27, there's a home Ashes series, which is followed pretty quickly by a 50-over World Cup in South Africa. So from McCullum's point of view, those are the huge things to be building towards. England have always struggled in the second sort of big pinnacle event when there's been an Ashes followed by a World Cup or vice versa. And it's all down to him really now to ensure that doesn't happen this time.
Lucky for him, it's all on song in tests. An entire summer unbeaten. Joe Root is racing towards Sachin Tendulkar. Gus Atkinson is, I think, the only name on the Lord's Honours Board, last anyone checked. But one of the biggest stories coming out of England's win at Lord's was the empty house that witnessed what was eventually the last day 4 of the second test against Sri Lanka. Osman, I'll come to you with something Matt himself brought up while he was reporting on that event. Could we call it the baseball paradox, that this England's mission to save tests is hurting tests by finishing tests so much earlier?
Yeah, I was actually more kind of convinced by the other point that Matt made, and that was made widely as well. It's just that the ticket prices for Test cricket at Lord's are exorbitant. There's no other word for it. You spend that. I think, was it the cheapest adult ticket was just under £100? Was that right, Matt?
Yeah, 95. I think you can sneak in for
£95. London is hardly an inexpensive city, so for people to make a day of it and to go to Lord's in these times, I would say the economy is kind of struggling. These are all very boring points I'm making, but they're also very true. They're very kind of adult, uncle-y points that the economy is struggling, so people they don't have as much cash to spend as they used to. But I would think that would play to it. I was still surprised by how empty it looked, and that might be down again, the baseball paradox a little bit, and also the sad truth of international cricket that it is the big 3 teams that attract crowds in most places. I was surprised, but then when you look at the ticket prices, maybe not that surprised ultimately.
Can't help avoid the sense of irony, Matt, in the fact that the MCC that sets out these prices is the same MCC that so often makes pronouncements on how they're concerned about the future of Test cricket.
Yeah, it was a frustrating thing to witness, really. Not least because just from a sort of just from a simple economic point of view, setting the ticket price high doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to end up with more money either. If tickets have been half the price, there's every chance they'd have sold twice as many, and you have more people in the ground to buy food and drink and a program and a hat as well. So, it was a frustrating thing to witness that there was no sort of last minute change. But yeah, it is a perennial problem around the world in Test cricket. I think it was quite notable that brilliant day at the start of this year in sort of late January, I think it was, Shamar Joseph's spell at the Gabba in front of a lot of empty seats then. And clearly in England and Australia, people are still in the habit of buying Test tickets generally, but more and more so. It will depend on opposition. It will depend on day of the week. It will depend on cost price and all that sort of thing. So it was a frustrating thing to witness, and it proved that English cricket isn't immune to the greater challenges that exist in Test cricket. But I still think that ticket prices was by far the biggest obstacle to more people coming. Test cricket.
Well, it's a pity because you look at some of the individual performances, storylines coming out, and they've been quite sensational. Gus Atkinson, like we touched upon, and the man who's the subject of our flash poll for this segment, Joe Root, who is eating centuries for fun. The simple, straightforward question: how many Test hundreds will Joe Root end up with? Isam, why don't you start us off?
I'll just throw out a number. I haven't really. We talked about the 3,500 is left with Sachin. I think 42. I don't know, 43, 42, 43.
Not.
I think he'll get into the high 40s. I suspect he might end at 47, 48. And if he gets that close, then there'll always be the temptation to take it a couple of centuries further.
Go on, lad.
I'll say high 40s. Let's go 48. The big question for Root is whether one of those will be in Australia in 25, 26. That's the one place he's not got one that he desperately wants one.
Yeah, I mean, if he does get that close, he'll be closing in on the ultimate man, Sachin Tendulkar. And when Sachin Tendulkar got close to 100, he did, and I'm putting myself in risk here, he did sort of prolong his career. And then eventually got that 100 in a match Isam remembers fondly, because Bangladesh beat India at the end of that contest. Right, we're just about done. And it's been quite wonderful examining all these storylines which have dominated our sport in recent times. Osman, Isam, Matt, big thanks for your time and company, but not going to let you go just like that. I do have a bit of a pop quiz. We mentioned at the start, there's not been much Indian cricket. It got me thinking, when was the last time we went, and in this case, it is 40 days without an India men's international, from the end of the Sri Lanka tour to the start of the Bangladesh tour. When was the last time India went more than 40 days without a men's international? Obviously, this cancels out the pandemic period, and we're factoring in the IPL as part of India's cycle.
There goes my answer. I thought lockdown, April 2020. Spot on. Aye, God.
I know you're not taking the IPL era. You're saying not including the IPL, right?
I'm taking the IPL era, but you can't count the 2 months of the IPL as a 40-day break.
Okay.
I have no idea.
I'm trying to think.
Come on, just throw your.
2018. When there wasn't an ICC event. 2018.
Not
2014.
Islam.
I'll just go like a wild card pick. I think 1995.
You've got a long dock, and it makes sense. India don't stop playing cricket. But the answer actually, and I was surprised to find out, was 2013, where India went 67 days between the end of an away ODI series in Zimbabwe and the start of a home white ball series against Australia in October. The only thing that, I don't even know how that happened, because it honestly doesn't feel like any of the last decade.
Memorable bookends for that gap. Zimbabwe on one side and an Australia ODI series on the other. Amazing.
Yeah, I guess the only sense behind this is that India get long breaks every time they win an ICC tournament. So The last time was 2013, now 2024. But yeah, that's about it. The next time we're back here, there will be some Indian cricket with much more meat than this to talk about. But for the time being, thank you so much, Usman, Isam, Matt, for your company. This was Reporters Assemble.